Breaking bad habits. I have students tell me all the time, they'll say something, we're working through a piece, and the phrase that comes up often is, ooh, that's going to be a really tough habit to break. I like to remind them, and I like to remind you by extension, that it doesn't have to be hard to break, right? There's a skill in breaking bad habits. And this is what athletes who just have a knack for picking up sports have. They have the ability and the skill to focus on things that need focusing on. So let's talk about breaking bad habits.
Drop.
Breaking bad habits is kind of the wrong focus. It's actually very difficult to tell yourself to stop doing something, right? Instead, when you're trying to learn something new, you should simply do that, right? You should find out, okay, instead of trying to not do this old habit, what should I be trying to do? Okay, so let's take something like not rounding, for example, right? Which is when you get in this angle here where you're kind of hugging yourself like this, okay? Instead of telling yourself, don't round, you need to learn to focus on the things that you should do that prevent rounding. When we talk about rounding specifically, this area is pinched. So you have to learn first, if you're trying to break the bad habit of rounding, you have to first identify, okay? If this is rounding, where is my arm at, right? Because the reason that you're doing it is probably, in the first place, you don't know you're doing it. So you're doing it in ignorance. So when I have students working on a piece, the first step is always to identify. This might take a couple tries, right? But if we were talking about rounding, I'd say, hey, we need to find out where your arm at, where your arm at. We need to find out where your bicep is at in relation to your chest, right? This angle right here. Find out where do you think it is? And that process might look like this. Then I ask, okay, where was it? Now, there is a reaction that is unhelpful in this situation. And that reaction is, I don't know, I can't feel it, right? And then you give up. It's like, I can't feel that. Well, in order to improve, you have to learn to focus on individual pieces of the throw. If you don't get it right away, no problem. Throw again. Close your eyes if you have to and start feeling, okay, if this thing moves, in your mind, figure out, okay, how do I hone in? How do I focus on that piece of the form? Okay? Doesn't matter if it takes a couple throws. So again, okay, where was that? Okay, that was here. I could feel that was here. That's step one. When you've got that, when you can feel it, now you are in a place that you can change it, right? But until you know where it's at, you don't know how to take it to where it needs to be. Now, after you learn to focus on that thing, after you identify where it's at, the next step is, hey, where should it be at? And then you get information at that point, right? Okay, well, it looks like at minimum, this has got to be 90 degrees. That's where the pros are throwing, somewhere between 90 and more than 90, right? A lot more than 90 sometimes. So definitely not here. So let's see if I can get it past. You'll see people who are learning that are naturally athletic doing things like this for the first time. They're gonna kind of shadow swing through things, and their mind, even if they're looking somewhere else, their mind is right here. They're focusing on this piece, and they're feeling this piece and feeling how it needs to move to get there, to get to that position. So now focusing on that same piece, next step is to try to feel what it feels like for it to be in the right place. Okay, so this feels like perhaps I need a little bit of tension in my arm here to maintain this space here, right? If I don't maintain tension, it's kind of pinching. Okay, so let me get accustomed to this feel, and let me try to replicate this feel in my throw. That was definitely wide. And this is where it's good to check in with a coach or with video and see, were you able to focus on it? Again, not a problem if you didn't get it quite right, but you want that reality to start coming more in line with what you think is happening. Identify first, where is it? Where should it be? And then you start feeling the things that take you to where it should be. Now, step 3 is kind of grinding the feel out so that you can do it more and more consistently. It's really important in this step to know that you don't have to do it correctly the whole time. The skill that you need is to feel when you do it incorrectly, and if you do it here one time, the next time, you want it to be anywhere greater than that, right? And here's a win, here's a win. Because they're adjustments that you're making. You want to be able to adjust and manipulate the piece however you want. And the skill of being able to adjust lets you then way more quickly find out in certain situations how to take that same piece, tweak it a different way, and get a different result. Okay, so for example, on approach shots, not really beneficial to open this up all the way, right? But if you only practiced opening this up the same way every single time, you're gonna struggle when you go to approach shots because you haven't learned to manipulate this piece on its own. It's important for you to know, okay, let's talk about the pocket not collapsing on drives, not as important for up shots, right? So let's cement and let's try to get to a point where we can have our muscle memory, have our body do the same thing without us having to focus on it. So then we want to get to a point where we don't think and we also don't collapse the pocket. Originally, we weren't thinking and we had this habit. Now we want to not think and have this habit. This does not mean that it's not going to break at some point in time, but it means later that if you've learned to adjust it, if something kind of slips and regresses, you can look at your form and you can say, oh, I'm kind of doing this thing again. That's why it felt so bad today. Hadn't felt that bad in a long time, right? And then using your skill of focusing on that piece and manipulating that piece of the equation, you can pop right back in much more quickly than it took you the first time. Probably not the most entertaining video on the internet, for sure, but certainly probably the most important mindset to have when you're working on form. Be someone who can make adjustments, not someone who seeks perfection every time. For a little bit of action, we'll throw one. Since you've been so good in watching this, we'll give you, here's your little treat.
This is the flip you want, Josh.
Yeah.
You're gonna put this on a like 80 big line.
Hit the bench.
Right thing.
That's for you. Thanks for making it through the video. I don't know what a good way to end the video actually is.